You're self-administering 200 milligrams a week and saying I'm on HRT. Okay, so you don't feel the effects of any of the negative things that are about to happen to you just from crashing hormonally. Okay, you're not on, a clinical HRT. You're not on clinical HRT. If you're just shooting 200 milligrams a week of testosterone cypionate and saying, oh, okay, I'll just do this and I'll be fine because my buddies do it at the gym. Man, some of them just looked like just doo-doo for 20, 30 years. They look like nothing. And suddenly, jacked, delts, traps, the face is cut and competing and everything. And, look, I believe my eyes and what I see. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. 3 decades of looking like nothing, and they claimed it was because of genetics. So somehow now they've figured it out. No, they're actually deleting old pictures off of their social media. I believe that we're sitting in an era where the population of men, both young and old, who are on HRT in particular, they're going to be the lab rats in the next 20, 30, 40 years. If your liver don't quiver, your bladder don't splatter, up the dosages because it really doesn't matter. Yeah, die big. I want to have an extra large coffin. I don't know too many people past 75 that are still on HRT, much less alive. Yeah.
All right, I'm back here with my friend, Mr. America, John Hart. I haven't had him on the channel for a long time. I call him my high-intensity guru who taught me a lot throughout that time, which I still did learn a lot. And so it's something I still kind of come back to on and off. So if you're looking for the man, Mr. High Intensity Training, I would say John Hart is the place to go. But something else that I think makes John unique and someone else to look up for, not just in that realm, but also being one of, if not, I could say definitely in the United States, possibly the world, you correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm putting you too much on a pedestal, one of the most accomplished natural, so no drugs, no TRT, using that loosely, bodybuilders of all time. Could I say that, you think?
With respect to, thank you for that, Mike, first of all. With respect to all of the guys that have come before me and currently compete, I would say, I was above average. I won some of the coolest titles. That's probably the best way to say it. I won the Mr. America, I won the Natural Mr. Universe. Man, those are fun and marketable. But there's some really great accomplished bodybuilders. So with respect to all of them, I was above average in my competitive career, above average, and I went to the World Championships. I took 6th in the world in the heavyweight class at one point, but otherwise having won some cool titles. So I'd say it that way, respectfully.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to emphasize that people are going to see the title of the video and what we're going to get into, but I thought this would be kind of a open discussion about this realm of, I'll just say, using anabolics, TRT, HRT, or just staying natural, whatever, into, if I put a context on it, certainly this stuff applies to younger people, but in that context of, say, 30, 40, 50 plus demographic, although, God knows we're seeing kids in their 20s now using this stuff to get a shortcut to their gains, so to speak, so we can even touch on that a little bit. But I think now more than ever, I've touched on this many times, me and you touched on this in past interviews, the increasing allure and, dare I say, temptation, but I don't want to say it again. I'm going to frame this probably in the first question. We'll get into it right now, because I've heard people promote the idea of kind of being the fountain of youth. Of course, yes, if you're low, it's up to you and your doctor, whatever, to kind of get these things checked out. Of course, disclaimer, nothing we're saying here is medical advice, but I've heard it kind of put out by some people saying that people that want to stay natural or are promoting kind of more of a natural type of bodybuilding as you kind of aging gracefully, so to speak, people will say, well, you're taking this superiority complex, or it's moral high ground. And I don't look at it that way in a sense. I mean, some people say you're kind of pushing it that way. But what I would say is that I do think if you take the natural course, there's a lot of good answers to why you maybe would want to stay natural, and also how it is very possible, and how I do think people are possibly taking, shortcuts. So let me jump into this question. There's a lot of stuff, as usual, whenever I have you on. It's just so much, I can't shut up because I want to get into so much in such a short amount of time.
Sure.
How would you approach that point of view? Like, you just had Dr. John Jaquish on, which that was something you can get into. There was we thought there was beef, there was not beef. I knew you guys would get along. You guys did get along. The interview's probably up by the time it's recording. I'll link that down below if you guys are all curious about that. John is someone who I said is in this camp where he is very much promoting the idea of supplemental, I don't want words in his mouth, but it sounds like the idea of kind of being optimal for your hormones. and maximizing that into a certain age of adulthood. And so kind of pushing I'll say it loosely, possibly pushing TRT, HRT for just beneficial health, whatever, versus saying your stance, you can say your age if you want to, but look amazing for your age. You put the years under your belt, and that's, I think, something else we can get into, just jumping into it in the mid-40s and expecting these things to happen overnight. You put the years in, you've proven you can do naturally. How would you approach that question about why don't you just take advantage of these things and be Super John, just the next level? Or how do you kind of work your way around this whole demographic of optimal TRT optimization?
There's no moral high ground whatsoever that I've taken. I know you haven't either. We've talked about this before. There's no moral high ground whatsoever. Okay, to each his own. That's my stance. Do what you want to do. I could care less, but don't you dare judge me for not going down that road. Don't put words in my mouth. None of that. Don't say anything. First of all, you wouldn't say to my face. How's that go? That's actually best way of putting that. Just I don't judge anybody. You don't either. I don't hear it out of your voice not once. Anytime we've spoken about it, and they certainly shouldn't judge me or you or anything like that. With any judgment, anything you couldn't say to my face, just don't say. That's the best way of putting it. But with regards to my age or experience or anything like that. The interesting part is I turned 60 this year, and I competed from age 18 all the way to 54, straight through. I always did the open class in natural bodybuilding. I had no desire at all to compete as a masters competitor. Didn't want to be that older guy going on the stage, and everybody compared him to his younger self. So when I knew I couldn't beat myself, I stopped. When I knew, I looked back at my pictures from the year before, and I go, man, that guy, I don't think I could beat him. That was the end for me. I just said, nah, I have no more interest. And I won all the titles I wanted to win. Now, with regards to the hormone thing, I said this to Dr. John Jaquish the other day when we spoke, that I'm kind of interested in how far I can go, especially in this climate right now where we have so many people on what they call HRT, TRT. Technically, look, if you want to say you're on HRT or TRT and you're getting tested regularly and it's keeping you right at your physiologic, notice I'm leaving the optimal word out just for the moment, okay? I'll bring that back in. Remind me to talk about optimal. Your physiologic age and what's considered normal. So we know that a man at 20 could have a testosterone level 900,000, 1,100, it's way up there. Okay, at 20 years old. At 60, they may only have a count of 300. Okay, both are physiologically healthy and normal. So, Mike, and I just picked if I'm off, guys, by like 1 or 2 points right there, please, forgive me. Just do your best to forgive me, and in the comment section, right? Just say what the actual number is, but I'm pretty close. I know I am. And within that realm, if you are taking HRT or TRT under doctor supervision, you're regularly being tested, and you're maintaining what is considered healthy for your age, great, good. But now we've come up with, I question the optimal thing, okay? Because it's just so easy. I've met physicians over the years in the gym who have spoken about optimal and how they so this isn't like major league tested, although we know that if Dr. John was on it, one day we got to do the three of us on one call. This is going to be fun. Because I would have said, Dr. John, tell us, is there a study done on this yet? And he would have for sure pulled it out, or said, no, there hasn't been. But ideally, we want to know, is that really optimal that a 65-year-old man, let's say, has testosterone levels of an 18 or 20-year-old? Is that optimal? Really optimal? Or is it just we're talking about optimal lifestyle? Because we've met many men, you and I both, over the last 2 decades especially, who have gone on HRT or TRT and gotten their testosterone levels to that upper 1,000-ish area or slightly more, or maybe just below it, and they're kind of rejuvenated to that 18-year-old age. But again, I question, is that really optimal for their wives and them when their wife is not back at 18? So is their sex life going all the way back to the way it was at 18? Because I'm not sure she's participating in that. Are they even having it at that point? Is it not just the sex drive, but he's turning into an 18-year-old animal once again, as opposed to 65 hormonally, which brings a lot of psychological with it. So,
or the opposite side, where it actually, I've seen and read that even though it's high, I'm not an expert in this stuff because it's not something I'm obviously not into, but many people are nowadays looking into the hormones, that you're on this stuff and it has the opposite effect, where now you actually are struggling sexually. You might be aroused or even the libido's off, but it can actually have a rebound effect. Not to mention all the different cascade, as you have to interrupt you, but we can't even just think about raising test levels. The stuff people are doing with growth hormone in these clinics of all sorts of concoctions is kind of the Wild West, as far as I know.
Yeah, it is. Initially, when someone goes in for the HRT or TRT, let's just call it HRT, okay, hormone replacement therapy. When they go on in and they get a standard, injection of testosterone from their doc, it is let's test it out in a few weeks or a month, see where your levels are at, and then adjust accordingly. So it does. They know that your own testosterone production, however little it may be, it will drop off because of the entry of exogenous testosterone, because you've injected an artificially sourced hormone into your system. Whatever your body's producing will drop off. So not only do you have to test for, hey, are we hitting it just right with our injection, but then in our regular every 7 to 10 day injection, but we need to also now test you a few months down the road to make sure it's being maintained at that level, because your natural levels will drop to nothing. They're going to tank out. That's physiology. It's not disputable. It's not arguable. Every PhD in biochemistry is going to get on here right now and verify. Yes, eventually, no matter what you do, you add testosterone to your system, your body will pick up on it, and it's going to drop whatever it is producing down to a nothing level. And you're going to have to take more exogenous, artificially produced testosterone to make up for that. So getting yourself into what's considered a normal, healthy range, that's true replacement therapy, in my opinion. And, for athletic performance, well, we have this little gray line, a little shady area that we kind of jump over once in a while, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that everybody seems to be going in. And man, they look pretty amazing. A lot of these guys that are just on HRT, okay, they look really amazing. So I have to question, where are their actual levels? Are they taking super physiologic levels? Are they going off the charts? Are they up in the 10,000s or 5,000s or 2,000s as opposed to under 1,000?
Well, I think there's more even to that number based on the research that I look into and what they're discovering on just the interplay of hormones and what hormones they're using, how you respond to them. I share with you this time, and I got to make a whole video just showing. I'll throw my numbers throughout maybe the last 10 years. I've gone a few times out of interest, and now I'm like, I'm not even going to do that because every time I look at it, it makes it worse because you're over. But my numbers are not good. So if you put me at aren't even those numbers you listed off from my age in the early 40s here, if you were to put me back at let's just say above average, I know I would blow up. I mean, I know just how my body would respond, just assumingly. Just working out, having those years under your belt, because I think that's huge when you compare someone who doesn't do anything physical for the rest of their life. Like even you, if you just started putting you, John, and upped you up like 300 points, let alone anything else that's going to happen, I'm sure, first off, that's not our topic into. I'm sure I would feel amazing. Like if the temptation is there, because I know I would feel like Superman. Now, do I want to deal with that mental stress? I don't know. But my point was, if I go back to those things of just being like, well, I'm just going to be at normal, I don't think I'd look normal. I would look beyond normal. And that's the other comment I want to get. My whole passion behind all this is because I could see some people watching this who are like, why do you guys even care? Who cares? Like, let people do whatever they want. And I think we were saying that. My emotion to all this stuff comes in with a couple things. I see people, this is not me being defensive, but some people are like, well, you can't look like that in your 40s. You got better. I saw your videos 10 years ago, and that's because I've said it many times. When I do pure strength training, I look flatter. You're a bodybuilder, you know what it's like. You can be stronger, stuff changes. So there's a way of training
Yes.
that without getting in, like not even scientific, just I know there's a certain type of training style, frequency, just what hits me, and like exercises that if I do a certain way, like my body kind of responds. I look a little fuller, of course, diet.
Yes.
And use, especially camera and lighting, a pump going on, so that's obvious. So when people say like you can't do that or it's impossible to do that, I'm like, it gets me upset because it's so self-limiting. And I'm like, you're just starting out. I mean, you give yourself some years, pick some,
Yes.
learn a little bit. You can do this because the alternative, you got to weigh these checks and balances because otherwise you're thinking, do you want a life of going into that doctor and you cross that threshold and now you're going to play doctor and mental stuff, traveling with syringes, etc. When I think most people at the end of the day, I think people at base level don't want to take a drug for the rest of their life and be, as I say, tied into a Netflix subscription model with your masculinity. They don't want to admit that, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
I'm laughing with you right now because I hear what you're saying. I disagree in the some people wouldn't want to take it for the rest of their lives part because I've been in the gyms for too long to agree with that. I've met so many men over the years.
well, I think
and
they want to do it, but the idea of like that you absolutely have to, or if like basically like if there was another shutdown and you couldn't get your stuff, the idea that you're like so connected to it. That's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they're tethered to the pharmacy. There's no doubt. There's going to be at some point in time, the supply runs a little bit dry in certain areas. I've seen a couple of guys in my area down in Texas that are on it that suddenly couldn't get it. They had to drive 300 miles I don't know why. There was just no supply. And they're on actual HRT and they had to drive 300 miles to go and get the nearest pharmacy that had it. So, for a temporary time period, it was about a year or two ago. And so there's that, but there are some, you're right, who just don't want to be hooked to having to use a drug to feel what will be essentially normal to them, for the rest of their days. And as yet, I've said this again with Dr. John, we had a fun time on this subject because I believe that we're sitting in an era where the population of men, both young and old, who are on, HRT in particular, they're going to be the lab rats in the next 20, 30, 40 years that we will have more data. There's not enough data. We will know. There's a definite we will know coming out in 20 to 40 years. My kids, your grandkids, they're going to have much more information on this subject than we have right now because there's just too few people who have been, correctly monitored for, say, 40 years. And did they make it past 70, 75? I don't know too many people past 75 that are still on HRT, much less alive. Yeah. So that part,
Playing
I've
devil's
seen.
advocate, I could see someone being like, well, I'm going to die in 5 or 10 years, or whatever. Like, I'll go out with a bang. I want to go out, big and jacked, So.
All right, ready? All right.
Or not even, or even the idea of feeling. I guess that's the thing, too. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get in a moral high ground because I don't care if you're on it or not on it. If you just go on some of these forums, you can go on a Reddit forum, and I occasionally go on there to see like what people are saying, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it is.
Yes.
And everyone's got different wavelengths. But my whole thing that I think they're losing sight of, because I've said this before, like we all have ebb and throws throughout the life of just whatever it is. It could be work, life, spouse, relate, all sorts of stuff that affects your hormones. And I do know one thing, that if you just let any kind of thought demon in your head and you start dawning on that, you'll find something to obsess about. And that's my fear, is that like you'll find if your scapegoat is I'm low TRT is the issue to all my problems, you're going to have that, no question. And when it comes to training, I think that's the biggest lesson that I look up to people like you from, is that, and I said something the other day, someone said like, oh, it must be great to, someone said something like, maybe alluding to one of my comments about like, or in my videos, that the person said they had bad genetics and, I wish I had your genetics or whatever. And I'm like, I don't see people your age walk. I'm like, that's because there's a natural thing that happens. When you get to 30s, 40s, people stop working out. They're not exercising, or they up and start again. So you can't really compare yourself to someone who's been training since high school. It's a different body type all together. And I
Sure.
know my own genetics. Like I've seen it kind of go how many years it took to kind of change things around to get there. And so unfortunately that person, I think, because of this media influence and this testosterone, like just hormonal culture, I think is losing sight of that too. And I won't even get like we get to the female spectrum because my wife was telling me something she's been reading about again.
Oh, we're not even there. Yeah, look, I'll tell you what, I have so much experience in the gym, from the last 41 years. It's really only in the last 5 since, the pandemic that I really ramped up my home gym experience and have accumulated more equipment, and I have a nice home gym that I use. And then I also have gyms locally. But prior to that, I was in the gym so much and around basically the culture so much that, if your liver don't quiver, your bladder don't splatter, up the dosages because it really doesn't matter. Yeah, die big. I want to have an extra large coffin. Yeah, man. I mean, you're right. That's the mentality, and it's short-sighted. And I laughed when you said that because I was going to say, yeah, that's really good until those 10 years or 20 years go by, and then and it will go by. Should you survive that long? I watched a buddy of mine, Rick Drayson, back in the day. He was an old-time bodybuilder who worked out with Arnold and the boys back in the golden era, and I was a regular on his show, so we did it live. I was over in his studio, and I would sit at a table with him, and we would talk bodybuilding for hours. And as he got up, he was 76 or 75. Okay, and I already knew for the prior year or two he had been on steroids. I'm using it as just as an example, guys. It's just an example, and he was open about this. So this is not. I'm not telling rumors here, and then I can share the personal conversation between he and I because I'm not trying to besmirch his reputation. He was open about this, okay, and it was the bottom line was that the 2 years prior to his death, he was having heart failure, kidney failure, congestive heart failure, which causes kidneys to back up. The ejection fraction was very low from his heart. The kidneys were backing up. He had fluid retention. His ankles looked like elephant legs. So when we would sit right next to each other, every single time he'd yell at me for putting my foot up against the side of his ankle because it was, well, I said to him, your ankles are this big, man. Can you do something about this? And then his forearm blew up. It swelled up too with water retention in the last 3 months of his life. And then he had a hole on the tip of his elbow. And as he sat next to me, there was water dripping out of his elbow. That's just horrible. And so he ended up, trying to manage with his cardiologist this whole situation. But he had been on steroids for, mostly 30, 35 years of his life, 40 years. And then he was on HRT dosages for the remaining years of his life. And that made him feel okay. However, the side effect, I'm not sure if it was just, or if it was directly linked to it. Of course, it sounds like I'm saying that, but it's kind of, when you see it a few times and similar among men, that are in that age group, I've seen it a few times, congestive heart failure type stuff, So anyway, I don't want to go too much conjecture.
Use your experience, and I mean, not specifically on Rick Drayson, but I mean, you grew up around bodybuilders. I mean, that little phrase you just said, that has to be something that goes around. You have enough experience seeing guys on and off drugs and be able to see the experience, and now you have the luxury to be, further on in years, comparing yourself to these guys that were using it, not using it. So if anyone's got, like, I think a real world kind of pulse on what this is like and also kind of the trade-offs, I mean, maybe kind of touch on that, because someone might say, again, well, I'm not going to be abusing heavy. I'm not a professional bodybuilder. I'm not going to abuse crazy amounts, but I'm just using a little bit. I guess compare and contrast what you see guys that are natural, who are useful, still doing exercise, kind of like yourselves, versus those guys that are abusing and things like that.
Yeah, I'm reminded of one of the gyms that I was a member of when I first started working out, and I saw a lot of the guys. It was Mr. America's Body Shop in Farmingdale, Long Island, and it was owned by Steve Mihalik. Steve Mihalik was in Mr. America in 1973, and that's where John DeFendis, Mr. USA 1988, also worked out with Steve at the time. And Steve, as he got older, Now, he was a heavy, heavy drug user, okay? And then as he got older, he got off the drugs due to certain health complications. His liver had certain tumors and things like that, and he had really abused it bad. But then he became an advocate for not using the steroid or the hormones. And the guys from that gym and from that era, besides the fact that, health-wise, some of them had certain issues. I'm not saying all, okay, some. I was in the area, I saw quite a few years what was happening to them. And I think more noticeable was they had muscle injuries on the external. You would see things like torn muscles happen because I'm not sure if their tendon strength was keeping up with their muscle strength. And as you get older, that may become more of an issue because I think naturally you have to really take good care of your system. And it's almost a little deceptive. If hormonally you still feel like you're 20 and in your 20s and you're getting older, like I endeavor to get 7-8 hours of sleep every night. I endeavor to stay hydrated at all times. I use electrolytes in my water all the time. Things like that, I make the effort to do. I am a big, big fan of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. And of course, now that I know Dr. John Jaquish, high protein. I eat high protein. I eat, less carbs as I get older. Those factors all kind of add up. So I don't think that it's just a genetic thing. Oh, you have good genetics. You look good, you look young, Well, if you saw my dad, and all due respect to him, if you saw him, he looks like a vampire right now, and he's like 82. And so his skin, everything is it's the hair, everything. He looks totally, but he did at 60 too. He also looked really old. He looked 10, 15 years older than what he was at my age. So it's not just a genetic factor. I think that there's a little bit of a deceptive situation. Like you have to kind of be aware. The brothers that I've seen in the gym, I say brothers, meaning brothers in iron, really. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so the brothers in iron that I've seen in the gym over the years, who I consider them that, and I melted right in with them, having great workouts and enjoyed it. And they knew I was natural and all that stuff, so they never really pushed anything on me. But I enjoyed my naturalness as much as they enjoyed what they were doing. But yet, I can say, I don't have any torn muscles, and I trained just as hard as they did. And they did have some muscle injuries along the way that became obvious. So internally, health-wise, it's hard to make the leap that every one of them ran into the same kind of health issues, because I think that we're about to see what happens with the ones who do true HRT. Those guys. Soon you're going to have the ones who are going to say, I'm not doing a bodybuilding HRT, which is what all the former pros do. I'm just taking 200 milligrams a week. No, you're self-administering. Here's a short for you. You're self-administering 200 milligrams a week and saying I'm on HRT. Okay, so you don't feel the effects of any of the negative things that are about to happen to you just from crashing hormonally, okay? You're not on, a clinical HRT. You're not on clinical HRT. If you're just shooting 200 milligrams a week of testosterone cypionate and saying, oh, okay, I'll just do this and I'll be fine because my buddies do it at the gym. Hormonally, you may not need it. You don't even know it. See, and that's the part that gets me, Mike, is that when I say that I disagree with most of them feeling like they're taking a drug for the rest of their lives, and there's a problem with that. I think most of them that come from the bodybuilding world and the gyms, they rather enjoy, taking the steroid of some sort. It makes them feel like, I'm still on, I'm still there, I'm still young, I have a physique.
I hate to ask this question, but it popped in my head when you were talking about former bodybuilders and you being so close to Mike Mentzer.
Yeah.
A couple of questions with this.
I know what he did. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, he's a pro bodybuilder. I don't have to obviously make any assertions there. But then you saw him later in life. Yeah. I'd assume, he kind of stopped his training a little bit. But then
I know what he did. Go ahead, ask.
Well, he stopped doing his drugs. When you get
no, he didn't. Ask.
Well, was he still using that, and how much did that affect him? Or what is someone, just using him as an example? Of course, and again, we're not trying to say anything negative about someone who passed away and like that. But I'm just taking someone, there's a lot of stories like that, just any ex-bodybuilders who are on and then off it. Would someone like him, or feel free to answer this respectfully, because I don't want to say anything negative about, again, someone who passed, whatever, or make any assertions. But when he kind of came off, he said, oh, he lost all his size. Was his size lost to just his bad eating, training habits? He was training more often, license to be all-encompassing. Or was he off the drugs? Is he on a lower dose?
Some of what you said is very true, and some of it, nah. And this is, direct from his mouth. I hung out with the man. I loved him. He was my buddy, and he was my trainer, for a long time throughout the 90s. He had a lot to do with my training and then helped me set up my business model. And I remained friends with him until the day that he died. And we lived very close to each other. I'd walk down the block and spend time in his apartment quite a bit. Okay. So I have no problem talking about it because it's going to help some people out there, and I'm not besmirching his character. Okay. The truth of it, and as a pro bodybuilder, was at the time he was on as much drugs as everybody else during his pro bodybuilding career. Okay. There's not much difference between taking a lot of drugs and taking a lot of drugs. Okay. Yeah. So they had various levels of a lot of drugs. That's the best way to put it. Okay. And he did the standard drugs of the time. Okay. And this is, again, just straight from him. I asked every question I could. If we had YouTube at the time, in the 90s, it probably was around, but the computers were probably as big as, my house, but, I actually would have interviewed him on this because he was so forthcoming with the information. But anyway, in retirement, he did not just go from, oh, I'm a bodybuilder to I'm going to ease off of the drugs and be myself now and be normal and just write articles for magazines and stuff. He had a drug issue. He had an amphetamine issue. It wasn't just steroids. He was an amphetamine issue. It was amphetamines, not crystal meth like people say. Okay. It was amphetamines in particular. Back then I think they called them bennies, and baseball players were addicted to it as well, right? But he took amphetamines to be productive, and like he had said to me, so I understand during that process, the steroid, linked up to his personality. For a while, he'd dabble in it a little bit. He had no fear of it, but dabbling in it for certain productions. Like for a while, he worked for Arthur Jones and Nautilus, and he shot those. You can find those videos of him online where he's training Boyer Co. Okay. Yeah. So for a while, knowing he's on camera, he's going to use a little something, to kind of look the part. But he hardly ever trained at that point.
Oh, okay.
That was the thing, is that he was devastated like a child, on the inside in his mind. He always wanted to be Mr. Olympia. When he realized he can never be Mr. Olympia, they'll never let him win. That devastated him. And that devastation led to his ending in bodybuilding competition, and then carrying for years very bad feelings. And then he got caught up in the name of being productive. He got caught up in the amphetamines. And so for a decade, Mike, throughout the 80s, he was, in and out of mental institutions, medical care. He was a mess mentally. The first time as a matter of fact, I've said this somewhere before, but the first time that I ever met him, I pulled into the front parking lot of Gold's Gym in Venice, and I worked out there, but I was also a trainer there at the late 80s and then into the 90s and the 2000s. And when I pulled my truck up and I got out the driver's side, and there was a Hornet, an old Hornet, those AMC Hornet cars from back in the day.
Yeah.
It was parked right next to me, and I hear giggling, and the windows are like halfway open, and I look in the car, and laying down in the back seat, giggling and talking. I thought he was talking to me. I said, "What?" Like this. And I thought I'm dealing with like a homeless person or something. It's Venice, California. Okay. There's a lot of homeless everywhere. But I looked and I said, "Mike?" And he started giggling some random stuff about Mentzer bodybuilding. I don't even know what he was talking about. It was completely non-coherent, and he was still in the grips of whatever was going on. So he was sleeping in his car, and he was a mess. And so it wasn't until 1991, 92 that he came out of that, when Dorian Yates started to compete as in the Mr. Olympia in 1991. that Mike had started up his training business again. He had kind of gathered a hold of himself, no longer in and out of mental institutions, and he was no longer under medical care. He wouldn't even drink a full cup of coffee. I make this point all the time. I ate breakfast, I ate lunch with him and dinner all the time, and he would not drink a full cup of coffee because he'd say to me, he goes, half coffee, half decaf. He'd always order like this, and he'd look at me and go, I don't want to poke at the bear, John. Like that. He was so not going there with anything speedy at that point.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So he knew, and he always made the point too, that when he saw the number one side effects of amphetamine use, and the number one side effect was psychosis, the first thing he said was, that'll never happen to me. I'm in way too much of a firm grasp of my mentality, of my faculties, like this, right? And then he says to me, he goes, John, the moment I said that, I should have checked myself into the medical facility because I was already in it. By me saying that, I was already in it.
Yeah.
Like this. He said it could never happen to me. And it did. So all throughout the 80s, understand, he was just crashing hormonally. He was not on. And if he did, it was so random. He was not on because he didn't care how he looked. You know, he was a little bit off the rails. And then when we got into the 90s, when he started his personal training business, that's when, he would dabble semi-regularly. If he knew he had a big trip coming up, I know one time he went to Italy and to Europe, and he was, Mr. Heavy Duty, and he was going to be training people on his new revised heavy duty system. And he had seminars set up, and even though he was wearing a suit, he wanted to look fit and in shape, and he would work out for a couple months before leaving, and he would be on during those months. And it was standard stuff, by the way, the DECA, the test, the Anavar, and he dabbled in growth hormone a little bit, during that time.
Well, this would be a good segue to something that popped up. We talked with Dr. John Jaquish, and and maybe he'll hear this, and I would say this to his face too. It's nothing derogatory towards him, but that's the pushback. And sometimes that people ask me these questions about the X3 and how it works, and they're looking really to John as like the poster child of like, well, this is someone who just, I believe John just uses bands. There's no question he's really passionate about it. It's not using it. Don't make the comparison. But people look at him like, well, here's this guy. He's got a great physique. He has his before and after. And like you said with Mike Mentzer and promoting his program, well, you're going to dabble and dial it up a little notch for a photo shoot. But with John, the pushback that people have, and I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty true. Is like, is that really just bands, or is that bands plus anabolics that really gets you that? And I think some people look at me and be like, I'm not. I've seen people write to me and they'll be like, I've been doing the Bex-free system. I get this all the time, and John does not want to hear this. He likes all the good stories, but there's people like I think are putting forth their effort. Who knows exactly what's going on? But they're like, I'm not looking like John. I want to look like or Mike Mentzer on the cover of Heavy Duty, and this HIIT training is supposed to make me look like that. I mean, how much of this stuff is kind of artificial? I mean, because we talk about. I won't say any names specifically, but we've all seen people that are one way. I just shared with you before we hit recording. There's one famous person who I saw now. I don't know what he's on. I don't want to say his name because I don't know for sure. But the guy looks more jacked than I would say someone who's on stage in a swimsuit competition guy type thing. Very jacked for his age. He's got to be 65, 70. Better than he was in his prime in 20s. I can put two and two together. And I'm like, there's no special training that's making you look like that. No. So he's on something. So that's kind of, I think, that's the part that I don't like, is the part that people say, well, I'm on TRT, I'm just on something. But like this is a whole nother kind of level, and you might be selling someone a false sense of goods. And kind of goes hand in hand, because not just on that the training system, I would say fake, I don't want to say fake training system, but in training system that's given this false promises, but also on what is possible. Because I think me and you would both know that if you do put the time in and you do it the right way, you can get a great physique. I'm going to say that I think it takes a little more work and trial and error, but I think that work is kind of worth it. So a lot of stuff out there, but
it does. You're right, and it is worth it. Number two, okay. With complete respect, and I've come to really like this man, Dr. John Jaquish. He has a community, an online community, and he has natural bodybuilders in there. And so he does have an actual WNBF. I apologize. I don't remember.
Was it Chang maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew his last name. I don't know his first name. And he has a world-class natural physique.
Yeah.
and he competes in the same organization I competed in, that's real drug testing right there. They, not only do they drug test during competition, they drug test in the off season too. So if you want to look at what's possible with regards to the bands, I don't know if he's built his physique on bands or if he jumped in late in the game. I don't know. I don't know anything about him. I do, other than the fact that he's in there right now, and Dr. John has some pretty big people in there as well that are supposedly doing just X3. I'll tell you what, it's a compelling. I have to tell you something. I'm going X-Files on this one.
John, we know this also as the hit, because these things go parallel, because this is kind of the pushback with high intensity training. We made a video on this, or I took a short of that people look at Mike Mentzer and hit advocates and be like, well, this isn't.
Yeah, I'm going to go there.
Does it really work if it's hit plus drugs? Is that really good?
No, I'm going to go there too.
Yeah.
I'm going to go there too. So the first part is I'm going to go a little X-Files on you with Dr. John and the X3. He sent me one. I just got it yesterday, so I'm looking forward to using it. And I'm going to use it properly. I'm going to study this first, okay? I really want to believe. There you go. That's what I mean by the X-Files. I want to believe. As a matter of fact, I would say to you, the thing that Dr. John lit up in me, Mike Mentzer lit up in me too. And that was, there's a part of me, just like a lot of the hit Jedi that are out there that want to believe. There's a part in me that just is willing to go out and say, I'll just do the bands for this next year and let's see. Or I'll just do this for the next year and let's see. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
That it's
I know
not
what you mean. I've been there. I would, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You've done, cycles of, training in certain ways. And so I
did the bands only thing too. That was my. I want to spoil your thing too, but I'll let you go through your own little journey in that. But what I noticed was it is great, but it's hard to argue that if I got something else like a dumbbell that I feel like this would feel better for this particular exercise, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to,
Yeah. And a little addendum. It's not my own little journey, by the way. I have a big journey. Okay, Mike, let's get that straight. So anyway, I say that with love, man. I love you. So I'm a word guy, though. I catch every bit of it. So when it comes to the bands, I really want to believe. Everything Dr. John has said makes so much sense to me. Variable resistance. Next to using an actual Nautilus machine, okay, you want to spend $100,000 on some refurbished, remanufactured Nautilus machines, have them all set up in your garage or your house or your studio? Great, go ahead and do that. That would be about the closest thing to getting it right. MedX machines back in the day. The strength curves on those things were right, except for the leg curl machine. Me and Dr. John talked about that. Other than that, they were all pretty good. The bands are sort of the bands in general are sort of without the Nautilus, the poor man's version of variable resistance. It is variable resistance, okay? If you use it the way he says, it's super intense variable resistance, so that's the part I'm really looking forward to trying out. Now, with regards to HIIT and high intensity training, and yes, he's got a physique. Yes, he admits he's enhanced to what degree. I don't know. I asked. We went through everything. You could watch my, it's already out. Watch my video with him where I interviewed him to get any details he's willing to share. But when you talk about people who represent the product that they have and all of that, he does have some people in those groups, both enhanced and not enhanced, that look pretty amazing. So that part is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. When it comes to HIIT training, high intensity training, over the years, there have been plenty of current, right up till now, advocates of HIIT style training that, man, some of them just looked like just doo-doo for 20, 30 years. They looked like nothing. And suddenly, jacked, delts, traps, face is cut, and competing and everything. And, look, I believe my eyes and what I see. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. 3 decades of looking like nothing. And, I can look at my friend Mike here on the other end of the camera, and, you look amazing compared to some of the people I'm thinking about. You look amazing. That did HIIT. Yeah. Yeah, that did hit for so many years and looked like nothing. And they claimed it was because of genetics. So somehow now they've somehow figured it out. No, they're actually deleting old pictures off of their social media. I'm laughing at that one. Deleting some pictures off of old pictures off their social media because they don't want anybody making the comparison, because they have to market their stuff now and their form of training now and their products now. And so in a way, that to me is a little bit unethical.
Let's because this is going in pretty long, and it's also good, but I want to make sure we leave people watching with some take home points. What would you, for the guy who is maybe in that 30, 40, 50 plus demographic, who is maybe tantalized by the whole idea, like, well, maybe I want to go down this road, what would you say to them, just in general, but then also what would be some practical things that they could start doing to say, I don't want to say optimizing hormones, because I don't even want to start. I like you, John. I don't even want to start thinking about hormones, because I just don't think it's. I don't think we can understand our whole body and how it works, all integrated with everything related, and going down drugs. I don't want to be a pharmacist or a chemist.
Sure.
With my nutrition and training, whatever. But how would you say is the best way to kind of just look your best, as we're kind of gracefully aging here?
Yeah. The greatest thing. I lobbed that similar question in to Dr. John during our interview, and I already had the same answer that he had. And my answer, I'm going to claim it as mine because I had it first, okay? And that is, if you don't need to do it and you haven't had it proven by blood work that you're deficient, woefully deficient in testosterone, then by all means, don't do it. Don't go down that road. If you don't need it, don't do it. You're opening up a can of worms, and you're going to mess with your physiology, and you don't belong messing with it. In other words, if something feels off, whether it's sex drive or whether it's tired or whether it's, your muscle mass is down, any one of those type things, or depression, any one of those things, then and your hormone levels are testing out normal, okay? Or even high normal. Just normal, let's say. Then the answer is it's something else. It's your lifestyle. There's something in there that's not adding up. Your training is not right. Your diet is not right. Your sleep is not right. Oh, but John, I only need 5 hours of sleep. Don't lie to me. You trained yourself to get 5 hours of sleep, okay? Stop the stimulants. Watch how quickly you go to sleep, okay, at night. Turn the lights off. Get off your electronics 2 hours before bed. Get to bed. Take some magnesium. Good night. You're out, okay? And you'll find yourself sleeping 7 or 8 hours straight, like, whoa, what happened? Yeah, it's because you got off of those bangs or whatever you're drinking all day long. And that will help.
It's the chicken and the egg, like you're saying, too, because someone can get their levels and say, like, I am low. Look, this is on a piece of paper.
Sure.
But, or I'm feeling weak. I'm always sore. Well, are you, like you said, are you maybe not doing training effectively or efficiently? Maybe they're doing too much, overtraining, filling up that cup a little too high. Or, again, not getting enough sleep. So I think you're hitting on it, but I want to reiterate that point that sometimes, hormones can be... I think one of the biggest things is, say, guys, T levels are so down. I don't really think it... I mean, it could be, of course. I have no idea. Could be something in the food or environment, chemicals, but my gut reaction is, like, what's the most obvious thing? If you're sitting down doing nothing all day on a computer, there's not much of a physiological need to push yourself. Or on the other end of the spectrum, we know that if you push someone hard, just have a really hard workout, or you're just really tired and exhausted, and we test your levels the next day, you can have a high-level athlete looking awesome who has low T, because it's just that cycle just hasn't had a chance to recover and recuperate, much of which I know I'm speaking to the choir here.
Yes. So you're right. And so I did an interview with Power Tech a month or two ago, and this subject came up. And in this way, lifestyle from the time that we're younger. Everything that makes up a boy to become a man is not really celebrated. There's a little bit of a demasculinization in our society towards, biased towards celebrating female characteristics that are even exhibited in young boys. And so that contributes, I believe, to the lifestyle. I'm only going to touch on it that much. I don't want to get your video flagged on YouTube. Okay, so let's move on from that really quick. 2, as I was saying, examine everything. How's your diet? How's your training? How's your, are you training intensely enough? Are you eating correctly? Meaning, are you experimenting even with your diet? Well, I always ate that way. Well, change it. Maybe you need to change it. Maybe get some help. Number 2. Number 3, are you eating enough saturated fat to produce good hormones in your body? Some saturated fat is healthy for you. Are you getting out in the sun? D levels, right? That would help as well. Test your D levels to make sure. How about this one, Mike? Just I don't know, maybe, jump in the sack with your wife and get down to business like you should. And, and yeah, maybe, she does need to turn it up a little bit to kind of get you rolling, I mean, that may be necessary to improve that aspect of your life. Okay. But get back to it. It'll only improve your relationship more. Okay. And then on top of it all, are you out there? And I use this phrase all the time. Are you out there killing something once in a while? I don't mean committing a crime. I do mean men, hunting, gathering, protecting. Okay, we protect. Are you going out there and are you killing something? We can't go out there and just kill something in the middle of the street, in the middle of society on a regular basis, right? If you're not hunting and hunting by hand, I don't mean shooting, but you're hunting. If you're not out there trying to kill something physically, how can you mimic that? Well, you do have to take something like a serious MMA and give extreme effort, or give extreme effort in the gym, lifting. I don't care if it's weights, bands, machines, whatever, but kill it. Are you killing it? Get after it, okay? Because if you're not, then you just said it, Mike. I'm glad you're a highly intelligent man that I respect very much so. If you're not giving your body a reason to maintain those levels, why would it maintain those levels? The answer, it won't. There's your answer.
Yeah. And you hit on something too. We could do a whole nother episode on this too, but the sexuality stuff, we might get into some theology here a little bit, but
sure.
When people start going down that rabbit hole of I'm struggling, I can't, in the bedroom, blah, blah, and I'm like,
sure.
Well, if you're, again, people aren't going to like this, but I think it's the truth. I mean, if you're addicted to pornography and you're watching stuff like that all the time, I mean, yeah, I don't think that's natural. See what happens when you don't watch those things to your sex drive. Give it a few days. And you will find your wife attractive, no matter what you think of her now. I mean,
good point.
So
great point. That we definitely have to do another one soon, man. Because this is we're touching on like 2 or 3 really hot topics there, and I think I could go on, but I get it. Awesome. And look, can I say one more thing? One little thing. Definitely. It won't go on for a long ways. Is that I would urge, whether it's a young guy, who really you just want to get on the stuff and build a nice physique, and you're, being anxious about it, I still would urge you to consider first competing in a natural bodybuilding contest. First, consider winning a world championship in natural bodybuilding. If you think you have it physically in competition to go for it in that realm, then do that first. If you can, and that was my advice to a young man years ago, Ruben Salas, S-A-L-A-S. He won we used to have the WNBF LA championships in Los Angeles. He won our show, turned pro, went to the world championships, took second place in 2016, took second place again in 2017. And that's when he decided to, jump onto the dark side. He had that kind of potential. And there were just a series of events that it was obvious they weren't going to let him win in WNBF. That's a whole other story. We won't go there now. But he jumped into the NPC, competed in the NPC 2019, 2020, and then he came to me and asked me to help him in 2021. So he placed in the top 5 in 2020. But in 2021, he said, I need your help. I said, then you'll train the way I tell you to train. And that was I'll say this clearly, the only change to his training, diet, and chemicals. High intensity training. He did 1 set per exercise. I've done multiple videos on this. Man, how come y'all have not questioned me about this? Like, this man grew enough muscle and he ended up winning classic bodybuilding at the NPC USA, not just his class, but the overall title in 2021, and turned IFBB pro, competed in 2 pro shows, and decided this ain't worth it. Very smart man. This ain't worth it. Chemically, he saw that his future was already baked. He's Mr. USA. I said it, I urged him. I said, you're Mr. USA forever. No one ever takes that away from you, right? Make a smart decision, kid. How far are you going to go with this? And credit to him. So he stopped, and he has other things in life. He's making some good money, good relationships, started a whole other life outside of bodybuilding, and said, yeah, you're right. I don't need that anymore. And so that's where he's at. But high intensity training, he credits 100%. Y'all can go look him up online. Ruben Salas, S-A-L-A-S, 2021 Mr. USA, overall winner, NPC in classic bodybuilding. He says it all the time in his social media that he credits me, but I'm going to tell you, God taught me the things that I learned in high intensity training, and I just used it all on him. So I give the glory to God on that one. But he does credit high intensity training as being the deciding factor. That was the thing, the change to his training that brought him to a whole other level. He put on 15 pounds of muscle that year on an advanced physique, and he won the overall title. So there's a real life example of one variable changing, just one, and it was high intensity training. So consider, the young guys, consider if you don't have that kind of potential, then stay in natural bodybuilding. And you'll build a great physique. It'll take you a few years. It will take you a few years. You'll look better every single year. If you're more advanced in your training, whether or not you've ever used anything, and hormonally you're considering going down the road of HRT or TRT, you've just heard Mike and myself speaking about this subject, and yeah, it's a personal decision, it's a personal decision. So you're going to have to consider, I would say, study it, and then interview, ask some of the people. Don't just go to YouTube, but rather some of the people you may know personally already in your gym, somebody that may be using it already, hormone replacement, maybe somebody in your own age group, and ask them, befriend them, and try to get, the honest truth out of them, and just sit back, make your decisions, pray about it, decide what's the best thing for you as an individual. And then I would also say, if you're married, let your wife know, decide. Don't just do that decision on your own. Don't lie about it. Don't try to hide it. Let her know and the reasons why.
Very common.
And, that's something, yeah. So that's something I would also add on to it. So I don't want to sound like, the HRT police. I'm not.
No, I was going to say, we probably should have started this in the middle or something, that my mind could change in this. I'm totally open to that. Right. About in 10 or 15 years, or John, you might come back in like 5 years, like, Mike, that stuff we said, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty legit.
Yes.
You should check it out. So I'm totally open to that, but I, for sure, just mentally, cost-wise, even though that's a very base level thing, if I feel like I don't need it, we can get into this too. I think aesthetically, I just like a natural, good-looking physique, and I know what's possible. I think we got into this a little bit. I just don't think you see that many people out there. You are in like the top 0.005% of people that have been training the way you've been training, and the proof is in the pudding, the way you look. Just right here. I mean, look at you. You get this all the time. 20 years younger. So I'll stop putting. My point is, I see what's possible. So when I look at you, you're my motivation. I was like, I'm sure I would feel great. I'm sure I would it would up my life a certain level, but it's also there's always a pro and con that I don't know if it's really worth it, what I'm seeing right here.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one point. That I endeavor to ride this. I want to ride this track as long as possible and see what's possible. I have long-term plans, and so I expect to be around for a long time, and I rather enjoy what I'm doing training-wise. I enjoy the changes. I like change, and I like the intensity of the workouts. I also want to see. Now I want to know firsthand. I'm 60 now. I do want to know what's going to be like at 70 with my hormone levels. I want to know, and how I'll double down on all this right now. Play this video in 10 years. I'm going to eat even better, get rest as much as possible, right? The best kind of sleep that I can get, and stay hydrated and train as hard as I can in good form, and do take care of my body. Obviously, you don't want to have injuries when you're doing all of that, right? And I want to point out, I know a couple of you guys out there just heard me say, get the best sleep possible. And y'all are just going, 50% of the men or 40% of the men have prostate issues, and you don't know, and they're up all night long, every hour on the hour, and you might even be one of them. Okay, my answer to that is go to your doctor and get it fixed. What does the matter with you? Why are you suffering like that? They have answers for that. It's not just taking pills. They'll get rid of the prostate if they have to. If things so swollen that you can't sleep, you're up every hour thinking you got to pee. That's ridiculous. I have clients over the years that have had that issue and have gone and got it fixed. Best sleep they've had in 5 years. Talk about getting old long before your time. Try killing your sleep because your prostate's waking you up every hour.
I think it's a good place to finish it right there. Prostate health right there. John, tell us where everyone can find you. I'll link everything down below in the description box as always, but let us know where to find you for people that are new.
Sure. I'd really advise everybody to go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. Just about every one of my videos at Mr. America Heart. That's the blood pump, HEART. I have about 700 videos up. In every one of them, just about every one of them, in the video description, you have all of my links and contact for all product, everything from, I have a website, I have a training course, I have books that I've written, the training course is not just a written thing, it's video training course. It's a massive library of stuff. And on top of it all, I do some consultations. You can get the links for that. I have some gear, some clothing that I sell. You can get the links for that. There's so many things on there that even for the rank novice, I've written a book on how a beginner should start, using some regular training, high intensity training, et cetera, all of it. I address it all. And then for the advanced, I have advanced books that I've written in there too. So, and then you can always join my training community. That's one of the things that I'm really encouraging everybody to jump in on. It's cost effective, it's reasonable. The amount of information you get, it's exclusive. I'm going to tell you that much too. As we're signing off here, I want to let you all know, when I put up a video on my channel, and even when Mike, you put this video up and you notify me that it's up, I am there for the first 24 hours. I'll go there purposely and I'll try to answer questions. I'll try to be in there. I'll read most of the viewers' questions and try to answer a couple as quickly. Even on your platform, I'll do that, okay, for the first 24 hours or so. But then I move on. The thing that I have to move on to is my training community is my priority. Yeah. Those guys and girls that are in there, they get my exclusive attention. And so there's exclusive content in there on training and just random things that I throw in there that I have never said on YouTube. I won't say on YouTube because it's worth going to my training community. Now that I started it, I have to get a bigger platform. I have to change platforms sometime soon to some more advanced platforms because it's growing. So I have to do that soon.
Awesome.
So welcome aboard. All of y'all, welcome aboard. Come on in and join us. That's what I'm saying.
Awesome. Love it, John. As always, we'll see you the next time. Hopefully we can get you and Dr. John on. That would be a great time for sure.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. John. I really appreciate you and I appreciate your viewers, appreciate your channel. Hybrid Resistance it's been great to be part of the growth of your channel. I know I've watched you since you were doing sliding bench years ago, and it's very, very cool to see that you're growing. You've put the work in. So I'm very, very excited for you in the future. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, brother.